Are you cramming for an anatomy test? Does the 250 plus things feel overwhelming? Or maybe you're just a curious person who wants to learn about muscles. Well, boy, do I have the video for you. In order to understand muscles, there are a couple of key things that we need to know. First off, that muscles have an origin and an insertion. The origin is where the muscle comes from, the insertion is where it goes. The insertion always moves towards the origin, and that will cause a muscle action. The action is what the muscle does and how it moves the body. The last thing we're going to be worried about today is innervation, and that's how the muscle is connected to the central nervous system and receives its information to move. There are 12 different actions that a muscle can do. They can complete flexion, extension, abduction, adduction. If we're looking here at my humerus, not down further, we got rotation, we've got circumduction. If we're looking at my forearm here, we've got pronation, we've got supination, and then in the scapula we also see protraction, retraction, and then we can also find elevation and depression. So with all of those things in mind, those are all the actions of our muscles. The other thing to note is that the fiber direction of muscles, when seeing the muscle, can give us hints that do that. So not necessarily do you need to know exactly every origin and insertion, because at 60 muscles in the upper body, that's going to be 240 things if you memorize each thing individually, and that's just a lot. So we can kind of get around that by just like spending enough time looking at pictures and cadaver images and stuff, but being able to visualize the body. If you can see in your brain where the muscle starts, where the muscle goes, and imagine the fiber direction and how it gets there, you can then imagine what happens to the body if that point of the muscle moves towards its origin, and then you have your action. Realistically, then all you need to know is your innervation, and I have grouped some things in a way that hopefully will make that stick. So with all those things in mind, let's go ahead and get right into the looking at our actual muscles and things. There's a lot of information for us to get through, so a lot of it's going to be below me in charts if you guys need the specifics, and we're going to just cook right through this stuff. Trapezius starts at medial third of the superior nuchal line, external occipital protuberance, and the spinous process is from C7 to T12. It's going to go to the spine of the scapula, the clavicle, and the acromion. It's going to be innervated by CN11 accessory. It's going to elevate, retract, and depress the scapula. Next is the latissimus dorsi. It's going to start or originate from this thoracolumbar fascia, the spinous processes of the lower six thoracic and the lower five, and all five lumbar, as well as sacral vertebrae. The iliac crest will be included in this as well, and a couple of ribs. It's going to go to the floor of the intertubercular groove of the humerus. It's going to come right underneath through here onto that spot. You can see there. That's going to cause us to be able to adduct our arm, extend it, and medially rotate our humerus as well. Next, we have our rhomboid major and minor. Minor is this guy, major is this guy. They're going to be doing the same thing and have a lot of the similar stuff. Their origin is the spinous processes of T2 to T5 and C7 to T1. Then we insert into the medial border of the scapula right on top of one another. That's going to cause us to be able to retract, elevate, and downwardly rotate our scapula. Both of those are going to be supplied by the dorsal scapular nerve, which runs with this artery here. It just, for some reason, does not show up on this software, which is really annoying. And the last thing we have to worry about here is the levator scapulae, who originates from the posterior tubercles of the transverse processes of C1 to C4, and then inserts onto the superior angle of the scapula. That's going to be able to cause us to downwardly rotate, elevate, retract our scapula, as well as laterally flex our neck. Real quick, I was confused on this for a while. If our scapula is rotating in this direction, so clockwise for our right scapula, or if it's going in this direction on our left scapula, counterclockwise, that's going to be downward rotation. Think of it like a clock face. If it's moving in the direction of the clock face, that's going to be downwards rotation, and then it's going to be mirrored over here, so it's going to be the other side. But that's how I remembered it, and that kind of helped me out. Moving on to the next section, we're going to be on a different program that I think is better. I just couldn't pay for it, so I couldn't get access to the torso now. Next, we have the muscles of the rotator cuff and shoulder. We'll start with the deltoid here. It's going to originate from the spine of the scapula, the clavicle, and the acromion process. It's going to insert into the deltoid tuberosity of the humerus. It's a little bump on the humerus bone there. We will see that it completes flexion and medial rotation of the humerus from these anterior fibers. The middle fibers are going to extend and laterally rotate the humerus, and then the posterior fibers are going to abduct the arm past 15 degrees. Its innervation is going to be the axillary nerve. If we hide this here, we can see the axillary nerve right there. Next, we're going to go to the subscapularis, who is over here. This is on the subscapular fossa. It's going to be more anterior than the others. It's going to start at the border here on the subscapular fossa, go into the lesser tubercle of the humerus. It will be innervated by the upper and lower subscapular nerve. That's the subscapular nerve right here, upper and lower subscapular nerve. And it is going to medially and internally rotate the humerus. So we can imagine those fibers doing that would cause that there. Next, we're going to look back around to the other side at the supraspinatus. That's going to originate from this border of the scapula here. It's going to insert on the superior facet of the greater tubercle, and it is going to cause abduction of the humerus. It will be innervated by the suprascapular nerve, which will also innervate our next muscle, the infraspinatus. Its origin is also the medial border of the scapula, but it's going to the middle tubercle, the middle facet of the greater tubercle of the humerus. It's going to do lateral rotation of the humerus. The last thing we have going to this greater tubercle here is going to be the teres minor. It is going to go to the inferior facet of the greater tubercle. It's going to start from the scapula as well, somewhere in this little border area here. And it's going to cause lateral rotation of the humerus as well. Its nerve, however, is going to be the axillary nerve along with this the deltoid. And then the last muscle we have to worry about in this little group here is the teres major. That starts at the lower angle, the inferior angle here, and inserts onto the medial lip of the intertubercular groove, the same place that our lats inserted into, and that's going to adduct or adduct and medially rotate our humerus. So those are all of our muscles in our shoulder here, and now we can move straight into the brachium. Real quick, forgot about the muscles on the chest. There's only 4 of them, so I'm just going to leave the information on the screen so we can get back to the important stuff. Pec major, pec minor, subclavius, and serratus anterior. Back to it. Now we're moving on to the muscles of the arm, the brachium. There are only 4 in this compartment because the rest are all forearm muscles. First of which is the biceps brachii. I'm sure that everybody knows this muscle. There are 2 heads, the short head and the long head. The long head is going to originate from the supraglenoid tubercle, which is actually on the scapula. You can see it right there. And the short head is going to come from the coracoid process, also on the scapula. It's going to insert into the radial tuberosity. We can see that guy goes right down into there. It is going to cause supination of the forearm. It is going to flex the forearm, and it's going to stabilize the glenohumeral joint right there. Its innervation is going to be the musculocutaneous nerve, as well as for the next 2 muscles we cover. Second muscle we're looking at is the coracobrachialis. So I'm going to go ahead and hide this muscle here. Coracobrachialis starts from also this coracoid process. It's going to insert into the medial surface of the middle humerus here, just on the bone. It's going to flex and adduct the humerus. It's also got the musculocutaneous, which I believe goes right through it. Yep, look at that right there. Beautiful picture, beautiful diagram. Next we have the brachialis, which is going to be this guy here. It's going to start from the distal or end the distal half of the anterior humerus right here, and it's going to insert into the ulnar tuberosity on the other side of the forearm here. So bicep was radial tuberosity, this is ulnar tuberosity. It's going to also be the musculocutaneous, and we're going to see that it flexes the forearm in any position. Last muscle we have to think about here, tricep, another muscle that I feel like everybody probably knows. It also comes from the scapula. The long head comes from the infraglenoid tubercle, and then the other two heads come from the posterior humerus. It's going to insert on the olecranon process, and it's going to be differently innervated. It's going to be innervated by the radial nerve, and it is going to extend the forearm and extend and stabilize the humerus. That's everything for the brachium. Everything after this is going to be forearm. So arm is this stuff, forearm is the next stuff. If you say upper arm, that doesn't exist. Moving on. Next thing we're looking at here is the superficial anterior forearm. This is going to be 5 muscles. One of those 5 is going to be deeper than the rest, and it's going to be considered an intermediate compartment. I throw it in with this just because it makes it a little easier, and it also shares innervation with some of the stuff, so it kind of works. Don't be deceived. This is not a flexor muscle. This is an extensor muscle. You can see by its by its insertion down here that it's not actually going to flex anything. So don't start your muscle counting, or like don't start your landmark with the wrong muscle thinking that this is something else. So I'm going to leave that there just so we don't get confused, but just be aware of that. All right, getting right into it. Starting here from the medial epicondyle, that's where that's where all of these are going to start. We've got the pronator teres. It's going to insert into the lateral surface of the radius, and if you'd believe it, its main action is going to pronate. The arm, again, that's when you are flipping that palm downwards. It's going to be innervated by the median nerve, which is going to do, like I said, 4 out of 5 of these muscles here. Next in line, we have the flexor carpi radialis. That's going to go from the medial epicondyle to the base of the 2nd and 3rd metacarpals. So if we look here, the base of the 2nd and 3rd metacarpals is going to be right about here. And then if we imagine we're pulling that thing like a pulley system, it's going to flex our wrist, and it's going to cause radial deviation, meaning that we're moving our hand to the side of our radius. The way that I remember radius side and ulnar side, it's kind of silly, but I think right radius or left radius. So like as long as the letters match right or left, then that's going to be the radius side. So right on your right arm, your right side is your radius. Left on your left arm, your left side is your radius. That's how I center myself there. Moving on to the palmaris longus, that's going to be the next one in line. That's going to come from the medial epicondyle. It's going to go into the flexor the retinaculum and the palmar aponeurosis. So all of this stuff here is where that's going to go. And that's going to flex the wrist as well. Nope, just kidding. Yeah, it's going to weakly flex the wrist, but mainly it's going to tense your palmar aponeurosis. The next muscle we have is going to be the flexor carpi ulnaris. Don't think that this is a flexor or an extensor just because it wraps so far around, kind of like the brachioradialis is deceptive. This one can be as well. We look at its insertion though, and we can see that it's right there on the pisiform hamate and the base of the 5th metacarpal. So we know that it's going to be a flexor, and it is going to flex the wrist as well as ulnar deviate, which is going to be your AD adduction. This is the only nerve here that's not going to be the median nerve that innervates this muscle. This is going to be innervated by the ulnar nerve because it is on the ulnar side. And the last guy we have here is the flexor digitorum superficialis. He's going to be underneath all of these guys, so we'll hide these for just a moment here. And it's going to be a long, big fanning muscle that has a bunch of tendons that go right through the carpal tunnel here. and it is going to start from the medial epicondyle. It is going to go to the middle phalanges 2 through 5. So the middle phalanges are these here. So you can see that it actually comes down and splits and goes right to the middle parts of these right around. It has like 2 forking tendons that come out. If you can imagine, flexor digitorum is going to flex your digits. That's what it does. It flexes the PIP, the proximal interphalangeal joint, and the MCP, the metacarpal phalangeal joint. So, boom, boom, you got it. On to the next. Real fast, just a way to help you remember these muscles. If we place the web of our thumb right here on our medial epicondyle and just drape our fingers down and then curl that thumb in, we'll have our pronator teres, our flexor carpi radialis, our palmaris longus, our flexor carpi ulnaris. Boom, boom. So boom, 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 boom. And then that thumb is going to be the flexor digitorum superficialis. Just like that. That's where they lay right on the forearm. Continue. All right. The next set of muscles we have is the deep anterior forearm muscles. These are going to lie below the flexor digitorum superficialis. And we'll start right here with the flexor digitorum profundus. If you look, it has the same type of deal. It has the tendons going, but instead the tendons are going all the way out, to the very tips of the distal phalanges. And that's going to flex the DIP, the distal interphalangeal joint. Makes sense? Next, just kidding. We've got an innervation for that as well, and that is going to be the anterior interosseous and the ulnar nerve. So both of those innervate this muscle. Next to that, we have the flexor pollicis longus. Anything pollicis is thumb. Pollicis, thumb. Flexor pollicis longus is going to come from the anterior radius and interosseous membrane right in between those two bones there. And it's going to move right into the distal phalanx of the thumb. So just like the other guy here, it's going to go into that far away one. So the deep muscles go to the far away phalanx, phalanges, whatever. And it's going to also flex the DIP joint of the thumb. Last thing we have is, just kidding, it also has the innervation of the anterior interosseous nerve, which comes from the median nerve. So all three of these get touched by the median nerve, but also the only thing that gets touched by the ulnar nerve is going to be the flexor digitorum profundus. But the last muscle we have to hide both of these in order to see it, and that's going to be our pronator quadratus. It's going to originate on the ulna and insert on the radius. It's going to have the anterior interosseous nerve as well, and it's going to be our pronator of our forearm. That's all of the deep compartment. Let's move on to posterior. Okay, so the next thing we have to talk about is the superficial posterior forearm, which is going to get kicked off by this brachioradialis, the guy that was going to trick us before. Comes from the lateral supracondylar ridge, goes to the styloid process of the radius. We can see that right down there. Innervation is the radial nerve, and that's going to help flex a semi-prone forearm. So don't get caught up in, even though it's on the posterior side, it's still technically a flexor. But it just doesn't lie in that anterior compartment. Now we've got the anconeus. That's going to come from the lateral epicondyle, and it's going to go to the lateral olecranon or ulna. It's also radial nerve, and that's going to help assist the tricep and extend our elbow. After that, we've got our extensor carpi radialis longus. Comes from our lateral supracondylar ridge, goes to the base of our second metacarpal, which we can kind of see right there. That's going to be innervated by the radial nerve as well, and it's going to extend our wrist and radially deviate. So that's going to mean move to the radial side. Next, just next to that, we've got our extensor carpi radialis brevis. So brevis and longus, they're going to do the same thing. They're just going to be named differently because we got a shorter one and a longer one. It's going to come from lateral epicondyle. It's going to go to the base of the third metacarpal instead of the second one. So we can see that right to the base of your middle finger there. It is going to be innervated by the deep radial nerve. So that's our first change we see away from the radial nerve here in this specific group. And it is going to assist our extensor carpi radialis longus. That's going to be its main action. Just next to that, if we keep going in this same line, we've got extensor digitorum. It's going to come from the lateral epicondyle. This is going to be basically our FDS from the other side, except on our back side. So we can see that it's going to go through that carpal tunnel, and it is also going to have those tendons that go down most of the fingers and insert right into those spots there. Those spots specifically being the dorsal digital expansions 2 through 5. This is going to allow us to extend our MCP and our interphalangeal joints. Boom, boom, boom. It's going to do all of them. We don't really need as much extension power as we do flexion power, so that's why we don't have two different sets of muscles there. That's why we don't have two sets of muscles. That's correct. But you'll notice that the little pinky is being left out, and that's because he gets his own extensor. Extensor digiti minimi comes from the medial belly of the extensor digitorum, so it kind of comes from the same spot, also connects to there. That's going to go into the fifth digital expansion, so just kind of the whole finger there. That's going to be the posterior interosseous nerve, which is an offshoot of the radial, and it's going to extend your pinky, your little finger there. Then the last thing we have to worry about is extensor carpi ulnaris. That's going to come from the lateral epicondyle, go to the base of the fifth metacarpal, so the base of your pinky, right in the palm of your hand there. It's going to also be posterior interosseous, and it is going to adduct and ulnar deviate as well as extend your wrist. That's your superficial layer, 7 muscles there, a little bit confusing. So a little bit of repetition could be helpful there. And now we'll move right on to our deep layer. Alright, the first thing we have here is our supinator, first thing in the posterior deep forearm. It's going to come from the lateral epicondyle and the supinator crest on the ulna. It's going to go to the proximal third of the radius, and it will be innervated by the deep radial nerve that we can see right there. And its action is going to be to supinate the forearm. Next in line, we've got the abductor, abductor pollicis longus. It's going to come from the posterior radius, the ulna, and the interosseous membrane. Its insertion is going to be the base of the first metacarpal and the trapezium, which is a bone in the hand. We can see that there, right there. That will be innervated by the posterior interosseous nerve. That's a branch of the radial nerve. We can see that right there. The deep branch of the radial nerve. There's our posterior interosseous nerve. Next, we have a little hidden guy. This is what we call the longus brevis longus sandwich. So we've got our longus there. Then we've got this little brevis here that's actually pretty well hidden. That's extensor pollicis brevis. So we'll have adductor, and then we'll have a brevis extensor, and then we'll have a longus extensor as well. So extensor pollicis brevis comes from the posterior radius and the interosseous membrane. It's going to go to the base of the proximal phalanx of the thumb, which we can see right there. That's going to extend the MCP of the thumb, this guy right here, metacarpal phalangeal. And it's going to also be innervated by the posterior interosseous. Then we have our extensor pollicis longus, which is going to insert farther down, and that's going to extend our interphalangeal joint and our metacarpal phalangeal joint. And it's going to also be innervated by the posterior interosseous nerve. Then the last thing we have here is our extensor indicis, like index finger. That's going to go right from the posterior ulna and the interosseous membrane all the way down to the distal phalanx, and it's going to extend your index finger, and that's posterior interosseous as well. So all of those are posterior interosseous except for the supinator, which is deep radial. We can see that nerve right here, and that's all the muscles for the deep forearm. Boom. Last thing we have to cover is the muscles of the hand. They go in a 3-4-3 pattern, so I can show that to you right now. Abductor pollicis brevis. We had a longus above in the forearm. Here is the brevis. That goes from the flexor retinaculum and the trapezium tubercle to the base of the proximal phalanx of the thumb. You can see that right there. It's going to have the recurrent median nerve as its innervation, and it's going to abduct the thumb, abduct the thumb. Then we have also our opponent's pollicis below that, also on the outside, the farthest side there. Ponens pollicis comes from flexor retinaculum as well. Goes to the scaphoid and the trapezium. It's going to be the lateral border of the first metacarpal, so it's going to be the lateral border out here. That's going to flex the thumb. Just kidding. That's going to oppose the thumb. I have re-recorded this section so many times, not going to do it again. It's going to oppose the thumb. Then we have our flexor pollicis brevis. That is going to flex our thumb, if you'd believe it. And that comes from the trapezoid, the capitate, and the flexor retinaculum, the muscles in the wrist here. And that's going to go to the base of the proximal phalanx of the thumb. You can see that right there. And it's also going to be the recurrent median nerve. So those three are recurrent median. Now we're going to flip to the mirror side where it's the exact same thing. Other than the palmaris brevis here, this guy, I really don't remember ever seeing it on my lab list. So if it's there, no, I don't remember seeing it though, so I'm not going to worry about it. So we've got our adductor digiti minimi. Same thing, adducts the pinky. It's going to be deep ulnar nerve instead though. It's going to go to the base of the proximal fifth digit, come from the flexor retinaculum, or the pisiform right there. Then we've got our flexor digiti minimi. That's going to be doing the same thing, flexing the little finger, base of the proximal fifth digit. You can see down there, comes from the hamate and the flexor retinaculum right there. Deep ulnar nerve, same pattern. And then, if you'd believe it, we've got an opponens digiti minimi down there. Hamate and flexor retinaculum to the ulnar side of the fifth metacarpal. We've got an ulnar nerve, and it's going to oppose the little finger. So those are the three muscles of our 3-4-3 pattern. Now we can move on to our 4 pattern. And the final thing for this video, the middle 4 muscles here. First of which is going to be the adductor pollicis. Comes from the capitate, second and third metacarpal, goes to the base of the proximal phalanx of the thumb. Comes from the deep ulnar nerve, and it is going to adduct the thumb, so it's going to move it this way. The lumbricals, here, 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 and here, all originate from the tendons of your flexor digitorum profundus. They go to the dorsal digital expansions of 2 through 5. So if we look dorsally, even though they start here, if we look dorsally, you can see that's where they kind of go to. You can see this guy has wrapped around, boom. They are going to flex the MCP and extend the IP. So flex this guy and extend that guy. Flip it all the way back around here. We've also got the palmar interossei. So let's hide these lumbricals here for a second. We've got 3 of these palmar interossei. There's 1 there. There's 2 there. And there's 3 there. So 3 palmar interossei, 1, 2, and 3. Those are going to come from the sides of our metacarpals, 2, 4, and 5. They're going to go to the base of our proximal phalanges, 2, 4, and 5. Come from the deep ulnar nerve. They're going to adduct our digits. So that's going to be these guys. Boom. Next is our dorsal interossei. That's going to be on the back side. And this is our last muscle of the entire video. Whoa. Sir, please. So our dorsal interossei, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 of these guys. They're going to do the opposite of our palmar interossei. So they're going to abduct our digits. So abduct. They're going to spread them. That's everything. That's every muscle that we've got to do. Okay, well, that was everything that we had to cover for the video today. All the muscles. Anything else like brachial plexus stuff and arteries are going to be in the next video that should be posting later today. Just didn't want to make this one too long. And, oh no, please, wait, I want to be able to advertise my stuff. No, check out the next video, please. Ah!